Say, kids, what time is it?
It's kind of like watching TV, but, in your car.
104.7 The Cave, Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens in the studio. It is Dark Side of the Stream.
They can put a man on the moon, and God, there's always something wrong with our stream.
You know what's funny is if we were on Apollo 13, we would have died all day long.
Yeah.
I'm Mike the Intern. This is Jay Stevens, Dark Side of the Stream, episode 92. As I mentioned, this week was Jay's pick. Randy Rhodes, Reflections of a Guitar
Something more
Icon.
lighthearted than rape, death, and murder that we've been doing for the past 2 years.
The pick I've got in my back pocket for the next one we're going to watch. But before we get to that, let's discuss this documentary, which you actually have to purchase if you want to watch it. It was $4
a few bucks,
on Amazon Prime. Worth, in my opinion.
There's Scott Meyer calling me now.
Hang up on that dude. Anyway, tell that guy we're busy. Great documentary. If you are a guitar player, if you're into Ozzy, if you're into Quiet Riot, if you're into just guys that shred,
rock and roll history,
you want to meet a really awesome dude in Randy Rhodes, you get to do that. And let's just get into it. I thought it
was a moment of silence.
No, well, yeah, dude. I mean, it's tragic what happened to Randy. And just it really is because what could have been with him, what he could have brought, is just a tragic thing. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But first, I thought it was really well done in the sense that who was it? Tracy Guns that narrated.
Yeah.
He did a really good job on this. And most of the focus was on the early days of Randy Rhodes and Quiet Riot.
Some great pictures.
The Ozzy stuff was like the last 30 minutes. I mean, it was really quick. Probably because some of the stuff they had to use was like found footage, because I'm guarantee you Ozzy's camp was like, either you're going to pay or you can't use this stuff.
That's terrible.
Which sucks. Terrible. And it's not really a good look on Ozzy and Sharon, which Ozzy is Ozzy, but Sharon never has had a good look as far as, if he was really, they should be so thankful for Randy, because if it hadn't have been for Randy Rhodes, Ozzy's solo career would have been dead.
Probably not as good, because he
not as good.
Fine. He got
it would have been garbage,
there, right?
Because he had that story that the guitar tech who was trying to help Ozzy find a guitar player.
Bass player, Dana Strum.
Dana Slaughter from Slaughter comes in. He's
Drove him around.
I want to find these guitar players, and hands him a list, and he's like, "What? What the hell is this?" Like he had no clue. No clue. And if Dana hadn't said, "This is the guy," this would have never happened, because at that point, Randy goes to London, writes all of these songs with Ozzy.
Yeah.
And puts a band together, and Blizzard of Oz is born, which is the name of that band. Then right before they put it out, they flip it to an Ozzy solo record. But those first two records were written at the same time. It could have been a double album, actually, but then they recorded one. They recorded the next one very quickly. Randy passes away in the plane crash. Ozzy's solo career just gets launched, and he's bigger and better than ever. Again, that all comes from Randy Rhodes. And if I don't care who you are, I love Ozzy, I love Sabbath, all that stuff. But a fact is fact, and the fact is, Randy Rhodes doesn't exist. Ozzy's solo career doesn't exist. I don't know what would have happened. It's hearsay, but that launching pad of Blizzard of Oz doesn't exist. No Ozzy as we know it in the solo. This doesn't exist.
Just the great footage too of like him playing with Quiet Riot, like in a park for like 10 people, like early gigs. Like you watch the whole metamorphosis, man.
The grind that these guys put in. And again, you're talking about arguably one of the greatest guitar players at the time in a LA band trying to get signed, doing everything they can. And we'll get into that next. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave. 104.7 The Cave. Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens back in the studio. Dark Side of the Stream. It was Jay's pick this week, Randy Rhodes, Reflections of a Guitar Icon. Now, Jay picked it, and I think watched it first, and he came in. He's like, "Bro, oh man,
you know how I get.
Controversy." Now, I wanted to bring this up because I want to kind of put you on blast, because Jay is referring to the, I guess, competition between Edward Van Halen and Randy Rhodes.
Yeah, it was Eddie commented on
they
Randy
were
Rhodes.
Essentially kind of going at the same time. Maybe Eddie had a year or two on him.
Yeah, he had a little lead
and
on
Eddie's
him.
claim is that Randy stole all of his stuff. Well, that could be or that couldn't be. I don't care. But there is a really good point I want to get across right now, is that yes, Eddie Van Halen has incredible talent. Randy Rhodes, also incredible talent. Even when he was on the road with Ozzy's like, he'd wake up every day and I'd hear him practicing every single day. You probably say the same thing about Eddie Van Halen, but the difference between the two individuals is this. Eddie Van Halen, extremely talented guy, and he knew it. And he let everybody know he was the best.
You got to do that.
Never heard Randy Rhodes say that ever. He went out and proved it with his guitar and his playing, but even according to Ozzy, even when they were on the road, he would teach every single guitar player that opened for that band. He would take the time and say, this is how I did it, and this is how you can do it. How many people, raise your hand, can say that about Eddie Van Halen?
Yeah.
Not trashing the guy, but I'm just saying, this is my point. If you are listening to this and you're trying to be a talented whatever it is, there's a difference between someone who shows it with what they do and someone who tells you.
Yeah.
And Eddie had a huge ego. He was a cool guy at the end of his life. He was. But at this point in time, not the best look on Eddie Van Halen because look at the action.
Well, and something else that was slid in there was that they would see David Lee Roth and
Eddie go to
Van Halen at their shows a lot. You would never see Randy Rhodes going to Van Halen shows to watch.
Now, the other thing that I wanted to bring up now was something that Jay didn't mention. And this is because it's a bad look on one of his favorite bands. Oh, no. At one point, Quiet Riot was essentially founded by Randy and one of his best friends who he taught how to play bass, who ended up being kind of an alcoholic. They ended up kicking him out of the band because he did tried
to shoot Randy.
He just tried to shoot Randy when they're like, look, dude, you need to stop drinking, start learning your parts. He pulls out a gun, starts shooting it, and then Randy attacks him, and then that's that. When they went to go look for another band, guitar or bass player who ended up with being Rudy Sarzo, which was a great find for them. They auditioned a young Nikki Sixx.
Yeah.
Who at the time
couldn't play bass, couldn't tune his bass, couldn't even put strings on his bass. And then when they were like, all right, and he's like, what's that? He had the look. He had the look. That's all. He's halfway there.
I paused
He's halfway there.
So that I could look at myself. I walked up to the bathroom and I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, you're right. Motley Crue is trash, and they've been trash since the beginning. And thank you, documentary, for proving my point once again.
Hey, but speaking of Rudy Sarzo, the crazy full circle thing of this is that now the only member in Quiet Riot that was really in Quiet Riot in the heyday is Rudy Sarzo's back in Quiet Riot.
Yeah,
and they're playing this weekend.
They are playing Black Oak this weekend. Skid Row, who's got a new record coming out this fall. It's actually really good. Warren, it's going to be a great show Warren, Skid Row, this weekend.
Man, I wish I could go.
Really get down to Black Oak and see these guys because they're super talented and they're still doing their thing.
Quiet Riot's still doing their thing. No original members at all. But they have at least one member of the, what do they call that? The legacy. What do they call it when it's
legacy,
like the prime time,
their heyday,
the heyday lineup or whatever.
All right, we'll go back to Randy's days in Quiet Riot next. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave. Mike, the intern, Jay Stevens back in the studio. Dark Side of the Stream, episode 92. Randy Rhodes, Reflections of a Guitar Icon. Now, I've mentioned this before. Anytime I bring up Randy, is that he was a teacher first. His parents were musicians. His mom founded a music school in California, which I believe is still standing for all lack of a term. And he had like upwards of 50 students. And
that was little kid shows up with his little teeny practice amp. No Marshall, no nothing.
Just a player, just a musician, just like one of us. Just happened to work his ass off on it and become one of the best. And arguably one of the most inventive, in my opinion, is if you listen to some of his stuff and what the short period that he was doing things. It's
the classical influence thing was what, which really was downplayed in the documentary.
Was downplayed.
They didn't say like he was a classical guitar player that went to rock.
Early on, one of the guys was like, they always say, Randy Rhodes classical. No, man, he was a rock guitar player. Well,
and he added classical in later.
Kind of. I mean, when he was in London trying to make a record with Ozzy, he was still getting classical guitar lessons.
Yeah.
A guy at that level writes the solo for Crazy Train, then goes and gets a lesson from someone else.
Guitar lessons.
That's an awesome dude.
That's
back to one thing
I
forgot to mention when I was trying to not dog Eddie Van Halen in this, and when we were talking about that, there wasn't competition, but this goes to show you the type of guy that Randy Rhodes was. Even when he knew he was competing as a member of Quiet Riot to get signed, Eddie Van Halen gets signed with his band, right?
First,
he's got to feel some sort of jealousy. I mean, it's got to be in there somewhere.
There was a little bit,
but then he's got students coming in with Van Halen tapes and saying, "I want to play this." And you know what he did? He'd go home and learn it so he could teach them,
and he would teach them the Van Halen.
He put that stuff aside. He wouldn't dog them. He wouldn't say, "I'm not teaching you this crap." He would do it.
You want to learn that? I'll show you how to play. Let me figure it out.
Another reason Randy Rhodes is an awesome dude.
And also, the funny thing I thought was that his guitar tech would put a picture of Eddie Van Halen on the wah-wah pedal. So when Randy came out, he'd have to stomp, and he would just stomp that pedal. So there was a little bit of hatred in there, a little egotist.
Definitely. It's a crazy. You feel bad for some of the guys, especially Kevin DuBrow from Quiet Riot, who eventually would get some fame later on.
He did a great job too.
He was a great front man. You listen to some of those early recordings when they were trying to get signed and them trying to make a disco
songs, right?
Like
the Quiet Riot Randy Rhodes years is not that good music really at all.
The lesson there is, and the drummer had said it himself. He's like, we should have just done what we did and just kept doing what we did until eventually it would come back around to what they were doing, but they just kept chasing what the record execs would say. Bottom line is this: don't chase that stuff. Do what you do well, do it good, and just keep doing it.
There you go.
We're perfect examples of that. We're still working, and that's what we've been doing. What we've always done.
I show up, and I'm just me.
I'm not trying to be anything other than myself. Yeah. So. Randy's story comes to a tragic end, obviously, in the plane crash. You can look into that, the theories about how that happened, why that happened, but it's ultimately a horrific end to the story for a guy who left so much in such a small time. What he could have done just breaks your heart. He didn't do drugs. He drank a little bit, but not really. Had a girl. He's just a player, and he loved to play, and that's all. That's all. He's a great guy. I mean, not one person in that entire documentary had anything bad to say about him.
No, even Eddie Van Halen, who said, "Yeah, he was great. He copied all my stuff."
Biting his tongue, trying to say something good about him.
He still
barely can. It's an underhanded compliment, but still, not one person. Not one actually, the drummer, who was kind of butthurt the fact that he didn't call him to tell him that he was going on the road with Ozzy.
Oh, yeah.
But in the end, I don't think that Randy thought that was going to be a long-term thing. I really think that he was in it for a little bit. He may have continued on, but he may have just come back to Quiet Riot or may have started something new.
And he also, you might have felt bad. Like he seemed like a guy that probably likes to avoid confrontation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he probably, the drummer was probably a little bit more aggressive, as a person. So he probably just didn't want to deal with that. Yeah. And he's just like, I'm just going to
do my thing. And it wasn't like he was gone that long. I mean, he went and recorded a record.
And nobody knew it was going to be big.
No, nobody knew.
Ozzy was this drunk.
He wasn't even in Sabbath.
They
were like, that guy from Black Sabbath? He's like, I don't like Black Sabbath. I don't like Black Sabbath.
Yeah, he didn't like Black Sabbath music. He was like, he probably just thought, hey, I'll make a little bit of money. I'll play on this record and come back.
Incredible guy, incredible musician, and we could all learn a lot from Randy Rhodes. We'll talk about our reviews and what we're watching next. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The K. 104.7 The K. Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens back in the studio. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The K. So how many classical guitars would you give this documentary of Randy Rhodes?
It was good, nice, easy watch. Didn't do anything crazy. Shed a little bit of light on maybe some things I didn't know, but I like the old archival footage. It's proof that hey, everybody starts out playing for 10 people.
And even guys like Randy Rhodes could go without being signed for years and years and years and years and years. And I agree totally for I thought the reason that I like this documentary so much was because, like I said, they focused on the earlier stuff, like Quiet Riot stuff that we may not have known about.
Yeah.
Because everyone knows the Ozzy stories, everyone knows Blizzard of Oz stuff and what happened, the plane crash, all that stuff. It's been retold and told and told and told and told. So you literally just throwing it into the last 20 minutes of the documentary, I think was good because you got to really hear from some of the guys that knew him when he was young, some of the guys he fought on the front lines with, and very cool guy. Like I said, watch this documentary. It's definitely worth the $4, and you might learn something about how to be a better person or even a better musician.
Yep.
Practice. For sure. You wake up, you play, you go to sleep. Right before you go to sleep, you play. And that's just the guys that I know in my life that are just unbelievable.
That's the way to do it, kids.
Hours a day.
Well, you do that, and that way, when you get to be 52, you don't have to practice at all. You put in all that time long ago. So
you just show up.
Now you just show up and play.
Just show up, do your thing, take your shirt off, and hit the lights.
Easy, hit the lights.
Next week is my pick for Dark Side of the Stream. We're going to watch a documentary called Our Father on Netflix. About the doctor who basically inseminated hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women, and there's a bunch of kids out there. It's crazy story. We're trying not to give Jay any ideas here, but I have a feeling
we might make me subscribe to 23andMe.
Bunch of he's starting to get them all these random
next week's show.
I was short on cash in the 90s.
Next week's show brought to you by Ancestry.com.
We'll figure that out and see how many little Jays are out there running around. As always, you can stream us on Facebook, YouTube every Thursday at 9 a.m. or as a podcast on our 104.7 The Cave app. I'm Mike the Intern. This is Jay Stevens reminding you, we watch movies,
documentaries,
so you don't have to. It's Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave.